Welcome everyone to today's class. Today we're looking at advanced phrasal verbs and idioms. I'm actually taking this from a book by Oxford University Press called Advanced Phrasal Verbs and Idioms. But I always say if you want to buy a phrasal verb book, please buy my book. It's on Amazon, £20 for black and white, £35 for colour, or even better, pick up an electronic version of it which will all be in colour from my website skype-lessons.com. and if you're not sure how that's spelt, it's right here, skype-lessons.com. Okay, so we're going to look at idioms firstly, and then we're going to look at some phrasal verbs. We're going to do a lot of revision when we do this book. There are a lot of good phrasal verbs and good idioms in this book. So let's start with the idiom be on the same wavelength. This is a very common idiom indeed. If you are on the same wavelength as somebody else, it means that you have found a language that you both understand. It means that you understand each other very well. And so when you are on the same wavelength as someone, you find it easy to appreciate and understand everything that that person says. And if they're on your wavelength, then they find it easy to understand what you're talking about as well. So it's obviously from radio, I suppose, this expression, to be on the same wavelength, but it just means that you have an understanding. You find it easy to understand that person. You have a similar perspective, a similar way of understanding the world. So that's be on the same wavelength. Bite the bullet. Now we use this expression when you understand that you must do something that you really don't want to do, that's really unpleasant, or it's something that's undesirable in some kind of way, but you have to do it. So perhaps you've been putting off a doctor's appointment for a long time, but the problem's been getting worse and worse and worse, and so in the end you bite the bullet and you go to see the doctor, even though it's going to be unpleasant for you and you don't like it. Maybe it's the dentist's. I don't like going to the hygienist and having the plaque scraped off my teeth. And nonetheless, a lot of plaque builds up, and I'm afraid I've been putting it off for a long time, so I'm going to have to bite the bullet and go into the dentist's, and they'll clean out, they'll scrape away all of that plaque that's built up on my teeth. And notice the phrasal verbs I'm using there: scrape away, build up. We use phrasal verbs all the time. I think that phrasal verbs are real English, and that when you use Latin words instead, you're avoiding the really English words. So please use phrasal verbs. Okay, beat a hasty retreat. This literally means beat a retreat, means to retreat. So it's often used metaphorically, and it's when you decide not to go forward with something, you beat a hasty retreat, you come back from doing it, you decide not to do it in some kind of way. So if you beat a hasty retreat, you withdraw from something or pull back from something. Notice the phrasal verb again: pull back, draw back. You withdraw from something, you retreat. If somebody takes the wind out of your sails, or if something takes the wind out of your sails, think of the wind as your enthusiasm or your motivation. And if something takes that away, you lose your enthusiasm, or you lose your confidence, or you lose your motivation about something, very often confidence. And so perhaps you're doing really well at school, but then you get a bad mark and it takes the wind out of your sails. You lose your enthusiasm, you lose your confidence. Okay, to be in the saddle. This is a horse riding idiom, and if you're in the saddle, you're in control. You've got your hands on the reins of the horse, and rein is right here. But if you've got your hands on the reins of the horse, you're in control. So to be in the saddle is to be in a position of responsibility or control. It's to be in charge, to be in the saddle. If you get your wires crossed, if two people get their wires crossed, they have a misunderstanding. And so to get your wires crossed in some kind of way is to get the wrong end of the stick. This, I suppose, is slightly different, get the wrong end of the stick, but they are connected. If you get the wrong end of the stick, you totally misunderstand what someone says, very often understanding something in the opposite way to the way it should be understood. So you get the wrong end of the stick. But if you get your wires crossed, then it just means you misunderstand something that someone said. Okay, this is obviously a telephoning expression. And so if you get your wires crossed, it's a misunderstanding. And if you get the wrong end of the stick, it usually means a total misunderstanding. Okay, if you learn the ropes, very common idiom in a lot of different languages. But if you learn the ropes, you learn how to do something, and it's the basics of something. When you're learning the ropes, you're learning how to do the very basic skills involved in that task. Obviously, this is a sailing expression. You learn the ropes, you learn about the ropes that control all the sails. And so you're learning the basics. So you're getting familiar with, yeah, very good, Lolly. You become familiar with something when you learn the ropes. You get used to it, you become familiar with it, some basic skills. If you keep a tight rein on somebody, if you're a parent and you keep a tight rein on your children, it means you control them very carefully. You control where they go, who they see, what they do. You keep a tight rein on those children. But you could also keep a tight rein on something. So you might keep a tight rein on, oh, I can't think of anything now. Usually it's used with somebody, to keep a tight rein on somebody. But you could keep a tight rein on your schedule, I suppose, or your timetable, meaning control it very carefully in some way. But generally speaking, it is usually somebody. And parents with their children, of course, a lot of parents keep a tight rein on their children. And I'm not sure it's necessarily the best thing to do, because you're not giving them much responsibility or much chance so that they can explore the world for themselves. But you could keep a tight rein on your students, and it just means control your students. It sounds strange to me to keep a tight rein on their progress, because why would you control their progress? But yeah, rein must be spelt with an E, not an A. Rein with an A is what falls on your head, and the reins of a horse is E-I-N. Okay, now we're coming on to the phrasal verbs. So there are a load of phrasal verbs in this. This is actually from chapter 2 of this book, Advanced Phrasal Verbs and Idioms, or chapter 2 or chapter 3. But talk somebody out of something is to dissuade them. So if you don't want them to do something, you try to dissuade them. Maybe they want to go on holiday to, I don't know, they might want to go on holiday to a country that you think is pretty dangerous, and so you try to talk them out of it. But to talk somebody into something is to persuade them, yeah, to convince them, to persuade them. So you might want to talk somebody into going out on Friday night, or you might want to talk your children into choosing a particular school. It's persuade, yeah, and talk somebody out of is its opposite, of course. But remember, there are many other good phrasal verbs for persuade. There is talk somebody round. I'm going to have to move this slightly. Talk somebody round. Win someone over means to convince somebody. Talk somebody round means to convince somebody. Bring somebody round means to convince somebody. And if somebody comes round, they are convinced, they are persuaded. So this is intransitive and this is transitive, and that's a very common pattern for bring and come phrasal verbs. And again, if you want to learn more about that, that is in here. It's explained in that book. Now let's go on to some other phrasal verbs over here. I'll have to pick it up a little bit. So if you eat something up, you eat it completely. Just like drink up would be to drink your, to finish your drink off, to drink up, to eat up. If you eat out, you eat in a restaurant. If you decide to eat in, you decide to eat at home. Yeah, so they're opposites. Eat into means erode if we're talking about a physical process. So you can talk about the river as it moves, it eats into the soil on the bend and it changes the shape of the river. So it can be literally erode, physical erosion. But you can also say, oh, all of this money that I'm spending on my kids' education is eating into my savings. Yeah. And if something eats into your savings, then of course it means your savings are disappearing. So you could use this metaphorically as well to mean erode, meaning something can eat into your free time if it's using up a lot of your free time. So very similar to use up in that sense. If something is using up a lot of your free time, it's eating into your free time. Okay, it means you've got no free time left. Now, if you take against somebody or something, it is the opposite of warm to somebody or something. So warm to somebody means start liking them, and take against somebody means start disliking them. And the same for something. If you take against something, you dislike it, you start disliking it. And if you warm to something, you start liking it. So they're pretty much opposites. Okay, they also go through put something down in the book, and they show how many different meanings you can have for put something down, and it is a lot, it's true. So, for example, put something down is the opposite of pick something up. I put my pen down and I picked it up. Yeah, you put it down on the table and you pick it up. Or you can just say I put it on the table. There's nothing wrong with that. But you can say I put it down and I picked it up. So it's the opposite of pick up. It's also the same as write something down. If I say put this down, it's important, it means write it down, it's important. So it's a second meaning of put something down. A third meaning of put something down, put an animal down, is to kill the animal, but because the animal is sick or something like that, because the animal is not in a good way. You can put a dog down, you can put a horse down, you can put a cat down, meaning to take its life, literally to kill it, perhaps usually because it's in a lot of pain, and that's when we use this put something down. So vets usually put animals down if they're in a lot of pain. If you put somebody down, you criticize or insult them. So this phrasal verb is like a lot of other phrasal verbs. It's like slag somebody off, which means insult them. It's like lay into somebody, which means start having a go at somebody, say bad things to them, criticize them over and over again. It's like have a go at somebody, which is to criticize them. It could mean tell someone off this. You might have a go at your kids if they've done something wrong, like tell them off. And the boss might have a go at you if you've turned up late again. And I would say that means that it's slightly different. It's very similar to lay into, but it's slightly different from slag somebody off, because slag somebody off is literally insult. Say nasty things to that person, call them fat, ugly, stupid, you're slagging them off. But if you're laying into them or having a go at them, very often you're criticizing them because of something they've done wrong. Now, if you run somebody down, that can certainly mean insult rather than criticize, and put somebody down can mean insult rather than criticize, but it can be both with run somebody down or put somebody down. It could be criticism, it could be insults. And if you get at somebody, then that usually means that you're criticizing them or insulting them, putting them down until they become upset. Yeah, and so if somebody gets at you, it means they're upsetting you in some kind of way. And you could also say he really gets to me. Get to someone can mean upset them, but get at someone normally means criticize or insult. Now, that's not the only phrasal verbs we've put down. Oh, and by the way, one more thing, you can use it as a noun. An insult is a put down. A put down is an insult, and it comes from this phrasal verb to put somebody down, to insult them. But you can also put somebody down for, and this literally means put their name on a list for something. Maybe you're all going to the restaurant and you put one friend down for a steak, you put another friend down for chicken, you put another friend down for beef. There's a lot of different things you could write there, but it really does mean put somebody's name down on a list. But it could be a mental list, it doesn't have to be a physical list, okay? But it means put their name down, choose their name for something. I mean, it's when they choose something usually. You say, I've put your name down for, I don't know, for Saturday. Maybe you're organising an event. Some people want Saturday, some people want Sunday, and you put that person's name down for Saturday. It means they have chosen Saturday. Okay, if you put something down to something, this means you're ascribing causes. You're saying that X causes Y. So if you say, I put the weather down to, it could be anything, couldn't it? I put the recent hot weather down to pollution, or I put the recent hot weather down to a strange movement of atmospheric pressure in a certain part of the world, and that's caused the recent good weather. Yeah, so I put the weather down to that movement of high pressure to low pressure, or whatever it is. I'm not much of a weatherman, but that would be a cause of the good or bad weather. And so you'd say, I put this down to, I put the weather, the good weather, down to the recent period of high pressure that's moved in. Yeah, I put my bad marks, that's an excellent example, much better than mine. I put my bad marks down to my poor preparation. That's a superb example, very, very good. Okay, and you can also say my bad marks come down to my poor preparation. And again, I'm going to use that example because it's very good. That's the that's the intransitive verb, and that's the transitive verb. Yeah, so you can say I put my bad marks down to my poor preparation, or my bad marks come down to my poor preparation. So thanks a lot, Linguo Live. If you put somebody up to something, you provoke them to do it, and it's very often used with children. If one child has a lot of influence on another child, he might put him up to something. He might suggest that he does something naughty, and usually it's about something naughty, this. And so if you find out that your child's done something wrong, you might prefer to think that it's somebody else's child that's been a bad influence on them. And you might say, who put you up to it? Meaning, who encouraged you to do this bad thing? Who egged you on? There's another good phrasal verb, egg somebody on. Who egged you on? Who urged you to do it? Okay, who put you up to it? If you can count on somebody to do something, that means you can depend on this person. Hi to Peru. You can depend on this person, you can count on them. They are a reliable friend. They will not let you down. Yeah, there's another good phrasal verb, let somebody down. They won't disappoint you. They won't let you down. Okay, so you can count on this person to keep their promises. You can count on this person to turn up on time. You can count on this student to get their homework done. Okay, last two, work something out, figure something out, very easy ones. If you work out the answer to a question, you figure out the answer. It just means to look at a problem and come up with an answer. But you could work out how much you need to save in order to buy that great car or that wonderful house. You could work out how much you need to save each week. You could work out the answer to 7 times 7. You can work out how much tax you have to pay. So there are a lot of different ways you can use those two phrasal verbs. They're very useful. They basically mean calculate in your head. Okay, so thanks everybody for watching. If you have any questions, now's the time to ask, because it's very hard for me to read comments and think and talk about these words at one and the same time. So now is your chance, and if nobody's got any questions, so hi to Pakistan. If nobody's got any questions, then we'll stop right here. I'd like to thank you all for watching. Please like, subscribe, buy my book, and I hope to see you all soon.